Welcome to Grace. My name is Tammy and this is church.
Psalms 85, 8-13. Let me hear what God the Lord will speak, for he will speak peace to his people, to his faithful, to those who turn to him in their hearts. Surely his salvation is at hand for those who fear him, that his glory may dwell in our land. Steadfast love and faithfulness will meet. Righteousness and peace will kiss each other. Faithfulness will spring up from the ground, and righteousness will look down from the sky. The Lord will give what is good, and our land will yield its increase. Righteousness will go before him, and will make a path for his steps.
Welcome to week 2 of The Story. The Story is a Bible series made by Max Lucado and Randy Frazee, and it is the Bible is one continuing story of God and his people. It's basically the Bible in chronological order, or at least the main stories of the Bible in chronological order, without all the chapter numbers and the chapter verses, just to keep it quite simple so a group of people could read it together and get from the very beginning, Genesis, all the way to the very end, Revelations. Accompanying the story, the book that we read each week, of course, you can read your Bible along with that, but it is a study guide. The study guide's divided up in 2 different sections. One, personal time. So throughout the week, you are going to read this story by yourself or read the Bible by yourself, but you're also going to read the study guide. It is called the personal time. And then when we meet on Sunday, we will have the group time. Personal time and group time, 2 totally different questions. Personal time gets you ready, gets your mind thinking about the story of God so that when we meet together on Sundays and we have group time, you'll feel confident to interact and to say, oh, this is what I was thinking and this is what God was showing me. The story is basically divided up into 4 different sections. Know the story, understand the story, live the story, and tell the story. So the very first part of the study guide is a multiple choice question. For this week, it was this. Number 1, what was the promise God gave to Abraham? That it gives you A, B, C, and D options. Number 2, why did God choose to spare Isaac's life from sacrifice? A, B, C, or D. Number 3, when Jacob wrestled with the man through the night, what did he want from him? A, B, C, and D. And then number 4, why did Jacob send flocks and herds to his brother Esau? A, B, C, and D. So you write out your answers, then you go read the book, read the story, and then you see if the second time, if your answers match up to the first time. Basically a test of your memory and to know if you knew the story before reading the story. It's very simple. The second part is understanding the story. And I'm going to give you a few questions from the understanding the story section from this week so you know what you could look forward to. If you were in Abram's sandals, what would be the biggest challenge of being asked to move to a new land? Now, I am no Abram, no Abraham, and I'm not Isaac or Jacob or anybody fancy, but I would say that a long time ago, when I became a Christian, I was a Torontonian. I am still a Torontonian. But I had this idea of going to this Christian university in Toronto, just a few kilometers from my house. And one day, as I went to go visit somebody, they said, did you ever think about going to Nazarene University College? And that was way out there in Calgary. And I kind of laughed. I was like, there's just no way. I'm a Torontonian. I am going to live and die in Toronto. And he said, well, just think about it. Think about it. But basically, I was like, there's no real thinking about it. Closed mind. And that next week, so I visited this man once a week. And within that week, I got a package in the mail by Nazarene University College. I got a phone call by Nazarene University College. I just went out to go visit and do other pastoral duties. I was an intern at that time. And somebody said, do you ever think about going to Nazarene University College? And somehow or another, enough glaring things came to me that I couldn't say no, and I got on an airplane and I said, I'm gonna go check it out. Now, if there's big red flags, I'm coming home because I'm a Torontonian. But if there's no big red flags, I'm just gonna assume this is God's will and I'm gonna do it. That was hard. That was hard for me, who knew I could get on an airplane at any time, Thanksgiving, Christmas, March break, reading week, and come home. But Abraham was asked to do something with no knowledge if he was ever gonna come home. And he didn't even know where he was going. He didn't get to have that test run with the red flags and opt out. He just fully committed. And I think that would have been very difficult. Anytime I think of immigration into Canada from other countries where people don't think they'll ever be able to go back home because the flights are so expensive or the travel's so far, I think that is some real dedication, that you would get ready, pack your bags, and go, not fully knowing, just assuming and believing in something greater. So Abraham did that, and I think that's impressive. The second thing is, what do you learn about God from the way he takes care of Hagar and Ishmael? Well, one of the things I took away is that God's the Alpha and Omega, so he knows the beginning and he knows the end. And maybe if he decided to look forward, he would know that this Hagar situation and Ishmael situation was going to take place. But it wasn't his choice. His choice was that Abraham would wait and have faith for Sarah. But Abraham, obviously, hard to wait. And he chooses to choose culture. Oh, this is culturally appropriate to, to procreate with another woman so that I could have kids. He chooses culture over waiting for God. But what's interesting is that even though Hagar and Ishmael were not necessarily going to be they were not the target for God. God wanted Sarah and Abraham to have a child. When Hagar gets pregnant with Ishmael, God doesn't ignore Hagar, doesn't ignore Ishmael. But they didn't do anything wrong. They were just brought into this. And so God blesses them as well. And there's all sorts of people that God blesses as well. And so I think that is very interesting. What is the most difficult thing for you to understand about the story of Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac? I think we just touched over that in our own Genesis reading about a month ago. So those are some of the questions about understanding this story. And then it says, live the story. Did you have a new discovery from your reading and study this week? If so, what was it? Well, I should know this. And it's not that I don't know this or I didn't know this. I just, all the, the brain things don't necessarily click sometimes. Abraham had Ishmael. He had a son. And then he has to send him away because Hagar and Sarah, they're just not really getting along. But he had a son. And then Abraham has Isaac. And at that point, after some time, God asks Abraham to sacrifice the one son whom he loves. And it makes me think that God, somehow or another, waited a long time for Abraham's faith to be built up, right? You're not going to have kids. You will have kids, but it's going to take a long time. You're going to be quite older. And now you have a child. Oh, wait, send that child away. Okay, you have another child. Oh, wait, now you have to sacrifice this child. But God is really developing Abraham's faith there. And I guess I just never thought what it would be like to be Abraham in sacrificing Isaac with the thought that Hagar and Ishmael was somewhere else about I just, I kind of wrote them off, and, at some other point they re-entered the story. And I think when I recognize that, it makes me read it a little bit differently. Wait a second, God, you told me to send Hagar away, and now you're asking me to sacrifice Isaac? Whoa, this is a big thing. Is there something you need to do based on what you learned? Well, I, like most of us, could continue to work on our faith, on my faith. There's times where sometimes I think there's no way out in sight. But that's my sight. It's not God's sight. And if God has a plan, then I have to assume that he's going to take care of it. I just have to have faith. That's what Scripture teaches us. And then finally, it talks about telling the story. So I'm here to encourage you today to get one of these books. You get it off Amazon. If you come to our church, we'll have one for you. But also to read this personal time. If you're not able to come to the group time, that's fine. But you could do the personal time wherever you are in the world. You could live in Ottawa and do the personal time. You could live in Europe and do the personal time. You could live in China and India, wherever you are, you can do the personal time and see how you connect to the story of God. Send me an email. My email address is stephenwilliamatkinson@hotmail.com. And I send out a bulletin every single week. And for the next 31 weeks, I will send out the questions so that you are prepared to do the personal time at home in hopes that maybe we'll see you at group time on Sunday. This is Grace. My name is Stephen, and this is church.
This is your story. This is my story. But most of all, this is the greatest story ever told. This is God's story.
The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward." But Abram said, "Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus?" And Abram said, "You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir." Then the word of the Lord came to him, "This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir." He took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them." And he said to him, "So shall your offspring be." Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness.
You know you're old when it takes you a couple tries to get over a speed bump. You know you're old when it takes you longer to rest than it did to get tired. When a 30-year-old mortgage sounds like a pretty clever scam. When your best friend is dating someone half their age and isn't breaking any laws. You know you're old when you discover the meaning of life, but then you forgot to write it down. You know you're old when you often repeat things. You often repeat things. You often repeat things. You know age has a way of sneaking up on all of us eventually. It can leave you with that sense that the best of your life is behind you. Maybe it's not age for you, but just that sense that you missed out on your chance at life to fulfill your dreams or to do something really meaningful. Well, if that's how you feel, chapter 2 of the story is going to be really good news for you. There's a noticeable pattern with God in the Bible where He picks the person to help Him with His plan to get us back, who in the lower story sees themselves as the least qualified person for the job. In chapter 1 of the story, God unveiled His vision. He simply wanted to come down into the lower story, which He created, and be with us. But the first people, Adam and Eve, didn't embrace that vision, and as a result, were escorted from the garden. A spiritual virus was born in Adam and Eve that creates the option for evil and selfishness in our lives and our relationships with others. This kind of lifestyle has no place in the community of God. We also learned that this spiritual virus, which the Bible simply calls sin, is transmitted to all of Adam's offspring, and that means us. We found in the story of Noah that the plan to get us back into a relationship with God will not come from people, not even from the best of us. So God begins to unveil His plan in chapter 2 to get us back. He's going to create a brand new nation. Why? Through this nation, set apart for His purposes, He will reveal His presence and His power and His plan to get us back. People of all nations who watch this new nation will be able to discover and see what God is up to. So the first order of business is to pick a couple to get this nation started. Now, who would you pick? A young, vibrant, good-looking, healthy, influential couple with a medically proven capacity to crank out lots of children? That's how we think in the lower story. But God thinks differently in the upper story. Later in the story, Isaiah will tell us that His ways are higher than our ways. God selects an old couple named Abram and Sarai. When God first taps him on the shoulder, Abram is 75 and Sarai is 65. They've got their AARP card in hand, discounts at Denny's for the early seating, and collect Social Security checks monthly. In addition to this, in addition to their age, Sarai is barren. She can't have any children. Why does God pick them? He does this so when people see this great nation, they will see not the strength of Abram and Sarai, but their weakness. They will see God as the one above the scenes of their lives, building this amazing nation. They will see His presence. They will see His power and His plan unfolding. At the opening of chapter 2, God invites Abram to go and leave the comforts of his homeland to a place that God would show him. And He promised to not only give them children, but to make them into a great nation. Not only this, but this new nation would one day be a blessing to all people on the earth. Abram likely didn't comprehend this completely, but God was saying to him, I'm going to use you and this nation as my plan to provide a way for all people to come back into the garden. The Bible simply says, so Abram went. In Hebrews chapter 11, we are told, by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Now, there's one thing I know about senior citizens. Being the proud possessor of my own AARP card, we don't like change. How many senior citizens does it take to change a light bulb? Change. Who said anything about change? But this older couple dug deep, got way out beyond their comfort zone, and believed in God. This is their only claim to fame. The story doesn't unfold as smoothly as you'd think. The first order of business is to start popping out kids, right? To have a nation, you got to have peoples, at least one. That's logic to us lower story dwellers. Yet 10 years go by and still no children. Abram is now 85 and Sarai 75. So Sarah gets to thinking, maybe God needs our help. That phrase always leads to disaster. She concocts a plan where Abram sleeps with her servant Hagar. Abram, as suspected, puts up no objections. They have a child named Ishmael. God comes to them and says, I will make Ishmael's offspring into a great nation, but this is not my plan. Ishmael is the father of the Arab nation and the foundation of Islam. 13 more years go by and still no child. Abram is now 99 and Sarai 89. God comes to them and changes their names. Abram's name, which ironically means father in Hebrew, is changed to Abraham, which means father of many. Ouch. Sarai's name, which means princess in Hebrew, is changed to Sarah, which means queen. Ouch. Hard names to live up to. Finally, a year later, Sarah has a child who's named Isaac. Isaac means laughter. You'd laugh too if you had a child when you were 100 years old. But the story isn't over. When Isaac is around 15 years old, just about to get his camel's license, God comes to Abraham and asks him to do a crazy, I mean completely crazy thing. Abraham is now 115 and Sarah 105. Optimal years for raising teenagers, wouldn't you say? Here's how it reads. God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. You know, I'm just the average Joe trying to get by in the lower story, but this seems completely insane. But Abraham obeys. We're told in the story, or in Hebrews chapter 11, that Abraham figured that God would raise Isaac from the dead. Now that's faith. As Abraham was bringing the knife down to take the life of his son, an angel, likely Jesus himself, told Abraham to stop. That God has provided a ram whose horns have gotten caught in the thicket. Abraham sacrifices the ram and takes his son home. Whew, that was close. Well, we are told that Isaac gets married to a gal named Rebecca. Now listen to this. They are married 20 years before they have their first child. This nation-building thing is really off to a slow start. But they have twins, Jacob and Esau, and we're told that Jacob has 12 children. Finally, we've got some real momentum. You think you're too old? You think you've missed your chance to do something big, something significant? That's the way we think in the lower story. But if we align our lives to God and what He's up to, some of our best years are still ahead of us. Oh, one more thing you may have noticed. Embedded in this incredible story is a clue of what is to come. In the story, God said to Abraham, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Compare this with John chapter 3 and verse 16 of the New Testament. For God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son. See the parallel? But not only that, do you know where the hill of Moriah is? 2 Chronicles chapter 3 and verse 1 tells us that it is the place that will later become the city of Jerusalem. It is the same hill 2,080 years later that God's one and only Son, Jesus, would be offered up as a sacrifice on a cross.
a wondrous attraction for me. For the dear Lamb of God left his glory above to bear it to dark Calvary. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. In the old rugged cross, stained with blood so divine, a wondrous beauty I see. For 'twas on that old cross Jesus suffered and died to pardon and sanctify me. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. To the old rugged cross I will ever be true. Its shame and reproach gladly bear. May you call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for